The sound of a paper shredder is distinct. It's a grinding, mechanical whine that usually signifies the end of a credit card offer or an old bank statement. But at 8:14 on a Saturday morning, exactly 1 hour and 46 minutes before the interview that would determine the entire course of my life, that sound wasn't just noise. It was the sound of my future being eaten alive. I stood in the doorway of my father's home office, frozen, watching the back of my stepmother's floral bathrobe as she fed the last sheet of charcoal paper into the machine. That wasn't just paper. That was study in grayscale, the final piece of a 20-page portfolio I had spent 3 years building. The portfolio that was supposed to get me a full-ride scholarship to the Archer College of Design at 10:00 a.m. before I tell you how I walked into that interview with a garbage bag full of confetti and still destroyed her plan to ruin me. Please subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments. What's the worst thing a family member has ever done to sabotage you? I'm Alina Vance, I'm 18 years old, and until that morning I thought the biggest obstacle in my life was mastering watercolor techniques. I was wrong. The biggest obstacle was Linda. To understand why a 45-year-old woman would destroy a teenager's art project, you have to understand the dynamic in our house. My dad, Robert, is a good man, but he's blind. Not physically, but emotionally. He married Linda 4 years ago, 6 months after my mom passed away. He was lonely, she was a dental hygienist with a syrupy, sweet voice, and he didn't see the way her smile dropped the second he left the room. Linda didn't hate me because I was rebellious or mean. I got straight A's. I cooked dinner 3 nights a week. She hated me because I had a dream that didn't involve her. See, Linda had a plan for me. Her brother owns a regional call center that handles customer service for budget airlines. It's a soul-crushing, fluorescent-lit warehouse where people go to have their spirits broken for $14 an hour. Linda had already promised her brother I would start there full-time the Monday after graduation. "It's steady work, Alina," she'd say, aggressively chopping vegetables. "Art is a hobby. Hobbies don't pay rent. You need to be realistic. You need to contribute to this household." She had been chipping away at my confidence for years. "That drawing looks a little dark, doesn't it? Are you sure you want to waste money on paints when your shoes are worn out? Your cousin got a job at the bank, isn't that nice?" But I had a secret weapon. My art teacher, Mrs. Gable, had looked at my portfolio in junior year and told me I had a shot at the Archer Scholarship. It's a $160,000 package. Tuition, housing, supplies, a golden ticket out of Linda's house and away from the call center. I worked on it in secret. I stayed late at school. I hid my sketches under my mattress. I treated that portfolio like it was the nuclear launch codes. The week leading up to the interview was a nightmare of paranoia. I had received the invitation letter on Monday. The final review was Saturday at 10:00 a.m. sharp. I made the mistake of leaving the acceptance letter on the kitchen counter for 5 minutes while I grabbed a soda. When I came back, Linda was reading it. She didn't look angry. She looked thoughtful. "A scholarship," she said, testing the word like it tasted sour. "So you'd move to the city? You'd leave your father and me here alone?" "It's an hour away, Linda," I said, snatching the letter back. "And it's a full ride. It wouldn't cost Dad a dime." "Well," she sniffed, turning back to the sink, "don't get your hopes up. Those things are rigged for rich kids anyway. I'd hate to see you crushed when you don't get it." From that moment on, the energy in the house shifted. It became heavy. I moved my physical portfolio, a large black leather case containing 12 original physical pieces and prints of my digital work, from under my bed to the top shelf of my closet. I checked on it every morning and every night. On Friday night, I packed my bag. I laid out my outfit, a thrifted blazer and black slacks. I set 3 alarms. I felt ready. The morning of the interview, I woke up at 6:30. Nerves were fluttering in my stomach, but it was a good kind of nervous. I went downstairs to make coffee. Linda was already up, which was unusual. She was sitting at the kitchen table, nursing a mug of tea, looking surprisingly pleasant. "Big day," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Yeah," I mumbled, reaching for the coffee pot. "We're out of coffee," she said. "I used the last of it, and your dad is still asleep. He was up late working." She paused, then smiled, a tight, terrifying little expression. "Why don't you run to the Starbucks on the corner? My treat." She slid a $10 bill across the table. I hesitated. I didn't want to leave the house. But I also desperately needed caffeine, and the Starbucks was only a 4-minute drive. My portfolio was in my room safe. Dad was sleeping down the hall. What could happen in 10 minutes? "Okay," I said, taking the money. "Thanks, Linda." I drove to Starbucks. The line was longer than usual. It took 15 minutes to get my latte. I drove back, listening to my hype playlist, visualizing the interview. I pulled into the driveway at 8:12. I walked into the house at 8:13. And at 8:14 I heard the noise. It came from Dad's office. VRRRRT, VRRRRT, VRRRRT. My stomach dropped. Dad never shredded anything on weekends. He was still snoring. I could hear him from the hallway. I dropped my coffee on the hallway rug. The cup burst, splashing hot latte everywhere, and I ran. I skidded into the office doorway just in time to see the last inch of my charcoal study disappear into the machine. Linda was standing there, calm as a monk, feeding my life's work into a set of metal teeth. The black leather case of my portfolio sat empty on the desk. "What are you doing?" The scream tore out of my throat so hard it hurt. Linda didn't jump. She didn't look guilty. She just reached down and turned off the shredder. The silence that followed was deafening. She turned around, tightening the belt of her bathrobe, and looked at me with faux confusion. "Oh, Alina," she said, her voice smooth. "I was just doing some cleaning. This old scrap paper was cluttering up your closet. I thought I'd help you get organized before you move on." "That's my portfolio," I whispered, walking toward the machine. The clear bin underneath was full of cross-cut confetti. Black charcoal, expensive watercolor paper, thick acrylic cardstock, all of it turned into worthless gray fluff. "That's 3 years of work, Linda. The interview is in 2 hours, she shrugged. "It's just drawings, honey, and honestly, they weren't that good. I'm saving you the embarrassment of rejection. Now you can focus on the call center job. My brother said he can get you on the early shift." She walked past me, patting my shoulder as she went. "You'll thank me when you have a steady paycheck and a 401k. Dreamers end up starving, Alina. I'm just being a good mother." I stood there, staring at the bin. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't breathe. I wanted to run into the bedroom and wake up Dad. I wanted to scream. I wanted to burn the house down. But Dad was a heavy sleeper, and even if I woke him, what would he do? He'd look at the shreds, he'd look at Linda, and she'd spin some story about how it was an accident, or she thought it was trash, or I left it out. He would believe her because it was easier than believing his wife was a monster. And even if he believed me, it wouldn't unshred the art. The interview was at 10:00. It was 8:20. I had nothing. I sank to the floor. I cried for exactly 3 minutes. I cried until my chest ached. I looked at the shreds of the solitude, a pen and ink drawing that had taken me 40 hours. I looked at the strips of Urban Decay, the mixed media piece that Mrs. Gable said was genius. Gone. Then I stopped crying. Something cold and hard settled in my chest. It was the same feeling I got when Linda made snide comments about my shoes, but multiplied by 1,000. She wanted me to quit. She wanted me to call the school, cancel the interview, and accept my fate at the call center. She wanted to win. I stood up. I wiped my face. I looked at the shredder bin. The paper inside was a chaotic mix of textures and colors, black charcoal dust, snippets of blue watercolor, jagged edges of white cardstock. It was destroyed, yes, but it was still there. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a box of heavy-duty clear trash bags. I went back to the office, unlocked the shredder bin, and dumped every single flake of paper into the bag. I didn't leave a speck of dust. Then I ran to my room. I grabbed a bottle of spray adhesive, a blank canvas board I had been saving, and a jar of Mod Podge. I didn't have a portfolio anymore, but I was an artist, and artists create. I drove to Archer College like a maniac. I arrived at 9:45, 15 minutes early. The waiting room was filled with kids who looked like they stepped out of a fashion magazine. They held sleek, professional leather cases. They were rehearsing their artist statements. I walked in holding a hefty trash bag and a canvas board that was still sticky. The receptionist looked at me over her glasses. "Alina Vance?" "Yes," I said. "You can go in, room 302. I walked into the room. 3 judges sat behind a long table. One was an elderly man with a bow tie, one was a severe-looking woman with geometric glasses, and the third was a younger guy who looked bored. "Good morning, Alina," the woman said. "Please set up your display. You have 15 minutes to present your portfolio." I walked to the easel in the center of the room. I didn't open a leather case. Instead, I appended the trash bag. A pile of shredded paper cascaded onto the floor, a mountain of gray, black, and blue confetti. The judges stared. The guy with the bow tie leaned forward, confused. "I apologize," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. At 8:00 a.m. this morning, I had a traditional portfolio. I had landscapes, portraits, and studies in light and shadow. But at 8:15 a.m., my stepmother, who believes art is a waste of time, put every single one of them through a cross-cut shredder. The bored guy stopped looking bored. He sat up straight. She wanted to teach me a lesson, I continued, kneeling on the floor next to the pile. She wanted to teach me that my work is disposable, that external forces can destroy years of effort in seconds, and she was right, the object is fragile. I grabbed a handful of the shreds. But art isn't the paper. Art is the resilience. Art is the refusal to accept destruction as the end. I took the spray adhesive and doused the blank canvas board I had brought. Then in front of them, I started grabbing handfuls of the shredded remnants of my best work and slamming them onto the sticky canvas. I didn't arrange them. I let them fall where they may, chaos, violence, texture. I layered them. I poured the Mod Podge over it, smoothing down the jagged edges of my own destroyed dreams. This piece, I said, my hands covered in glue and charcoal dust, is titled Linda. It represents the attempt to silence creativity and the inevitable failure of that attempt. You can shred the paper, but you can't shred the artist. I stood up. The canvas was a mess of texture, a violent, abstract swirl of my history. It was ugly. It was raw. It was the most honest thing I had ever made. The room was silent for a long time. I thought I had blown it. I thought they were going to call security. Then, the severe woman with the glasses stood up. She walked over to the easel and looked closely at the sticky, chaotic collage. She looked at the shreds of a charcoal eye looking back at her from the mess. She turned to me, and for the first time, she smiled. "That," she said, "is the most punk rock thing I have ever seen in this room." I got the email 3 days later. Not only did I get the scholarship, I got the Dean's Merit Award for Conceptual Excellence. A full ride, plus a stipend for supplies. I read the email in my car, parked down the street from my house, and screamed until my throat was sore. But I wasn't done. I still had to deal with the reason I had to make a collage out of garbage in the first place. See, Linda made a critical error. She thought she was smart, but she wasn't observant. 2 weeks before the shredding incident, I had noticed that $20 bills were missing from my dresser. I didn't trust Linda, so I had bought a cheap, motion-activated nanny cam shaped like a USB charger and plugged it into the outlet in Dad's office, mostly because that's where I kept my cash box sometimes. I hadn't checked the footage on the day of the shredding because I was in too much of a panic. But after the interview, I went straight to the Cloud app on my phone. And there it was, 8:14 a.m. High-definition video and crisp audio. You could see Linda walk in. You could hear her humming. You could hear her say, "Goodbye, stupid drawings," as she fed the first sheet in. You could see the smirk. And most damning of all, you could hear her phone ring mid-shred. She answered it on speaker. It was her brother. "Yeah, I'm doing it now," she said to the phone. "She'll have nothing to show them. She'll be crying by noon, and I'll have her filling out the application for your place by dinner. We just need her paycheck to cover the lease on the new car, right? Yeah, I know. I got you." She wasn't just trying to help me be realistic. She and her brother wanted my minimum wage income to subsidize their lifestyle. She was shredding my future to buy herself a Kia. I saved the video. I backed it up. I waited for the perfect moment. That moment came the following Friday. Dad took us out to dinner to celebrate me getting the scholarship, though he thought I had just presented a normal portfolio. Linda was fuming silently, picking at her salad. She hadn't said a word to me all week. "I'm just so proud of you, Alina," Dad said, raising his glass. "I know Linda was worried about the practicality of it, but clearly you have talent." "Talent is luck," Linda muttered. "She just got lucky." "Actually, Dad," I said, pulling out my phone, "I want to show you exactly how I got the scholarship. I didn't use my drawings, I used a performance piece." "Oh," Dad smiled. "Do you have a video?" "I do," I said. "I'm going to cast it to the TV in the bar, is that okay?" It wasn't a bar TV. I just slid my phone across the table to him. "Watch this, sound up." Dad watched. I saw the exact moment his brain processed what he was seeing. He saw his wife in his office destroying his daughter's work. He heard the "goodbye, stupid drawings." He heard the conversation about the call center paycheck and the car lease. Linda frowned. "What are you watching?" Dad didn't answer. He watched the video loop twice. Then he set the phone down gently on the table. He took off his glasses. He looked at Linda. The color was gone from his face. "You shredded it," he said. His voice was quiet, terrifyingly so. "What?" Linda froze. "Alina's work, you shredded it. I'm watching you do it." "Robert, that must be fake. She's good with computers, she—" "I heard you talking to your brother," Dad interrupted, his voice rising. "You want to use my daughter's wages to pay for a car? You destroyed her property." "I was trying to help her," Linda shrieked, realizing the jig was up. "She needs to grow up. Art is for children." Dad stood up. In the middle of the Olive Garden, he stood up and threw his napkin on the table. "You have 2 hours," he said. "What?" Linda blinked. "To pack. You have 2 hours to get your things and get out of my house. If you're not gone by the time I finish this dessert and drive home, I'm calling the police and pressing charges for destruction of property and theft." Linda tried to argue. She tried to cry. She tried the "I did it for us" routine. Dad just walked out to the car and sat there. I stayed at the table and ate a breadstick, watching her meltdown. She ended up taking an Uber to her brother's house that night. The divorce wasn't messy, it was swift. Dad, guilt-ridden that he had missed so much, let her take the furniture she wanted just to get her out faster. I didn't care about the furniture. I had my scholarship. I moved into the dorms at Archer 3 months ago. My room is covered in art, but my favorite piece is framed right above my desk. It's a small 5x7 section of that glue and trash collage I made in the interview room. The judges let me keep a piece of it. It reminds me that destruction is just a starting point for creation. Linda tried to text me once, asking if I could put in a good word for her with Dad because she was short on cash. I replied with a single photo, a close-up of my shredder full of junk mail. Then I blocked her number. I'm Alina Vance, I'm an artist. And if you ever find yourself staring at a pile of shredded dreams, just remember, that's just confetti for your victory party. Thanks for watching. If you liked this story, hit the like button and subscribe. And seriously, check your glove box for hidden deeds and check your office for hidden cameras. You never know who is plotting against you.